looks like Florida outpaced California and Texas in solar projects in terms of deployments. That just blows my mind in general. These guys are just leading like the charts.
The speed of solar still blows my mind.
Yeah.
Most of the time, the construction's starting before the design's even at IFC.
Yeah.
It's very fast.
So you might be thinking from the perspective, oh wow, the sun is so powerful, but
Yeah.
you guys are the solar
That's
cell
my
is-
perspective. That's EVS's new motto, actually. The sun is so powerful. All right, greetings. Welcome to another Sounds of Solar podcast. Joining me today is my two very esteemed co-hosts.
Prahalad Shivshankaran here.
Russell Hamilton here.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about three topics. We've got the role of battery energy storage. We've got the recent shift in capacity change with some states in the United States, and also the energy mix and solar's rise in it. So, gentlemen, before we get into that, what's been happening lately? Anything interesting? We can't talk about racing. We talked a lot about racing. Maybe some football. Did you watch a football game this weekend? I'm talking about European football, not...
I'm going to pivot
American
from football,
football.
but I did do a site visit recently.
Oh, a
is kinda
site
super
visit.
cool.
All right, this is okay.
So this is my first site visit with EVS. So
Yeah.
I've done some couple of site visits when I was with Allen Systems, where most of them are fixed tilt projects. But yeah, I think this was the first time I actually got to see a
where
tracker
was this?
system. This was in Buffalo, New York.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you
I don't want to
okay.
give too much away about which company I had to go.
You
I was
just went
working
to a
with,
solar
but
site.
yes, I just went to a solar site, and yeah, I got to see a fixed tilt as well as a tracker system. Basically did like a golden row walk, which was essentially the construction team builds one particular rack based on the plan set, and there's independent engineers as well as EVS who are the designers on this. Both of us go on site, make sure that everything is good, and then we give the go ahead so construction can complete the project. So it was a good learning experience. Actually, it wasn't my project, but like just jumped in there, and then it was great to interact with everybody there. And yeah, it's crazy how after going there, I just realized that when we talk about details in our plan set, it actually makes a difference, because any small mistake, the guys in the construction team, if they don't see it on the plan set, they're not building it. So it's as simple as that. So it was pretty cool. I think that was eye-opening for me.
Just diving right in.
I
Right
know.
to work.
No, it was crazy. I loved it. So.
And also, you can point out that if there is a detail on there, they're going to build it, even if it's a mistake.
Yeah.
The exciting thing that's coming up is my trip to Utah. We can talk about that. I haven't done it yet.
Well, what's that? What's that
So
about?
I'm going to Bryce as well as National Park.
And where are these? I don't know. My Utah geography is poor at best.
You're asking
Southwest.
south.
Are you flying to
Southwest.
to Vegas?
Yeah, I'm flying to Vegas and
Okay.
then driving to Zion, and then I think we're doing the glamping thing. So it's
Yeah.
so.
What are you staying in, like a retrofitted yurt or
Yeah,
something?
it looks like a caravan. So
Okay.
So I wanted to do the tent, but my wife wasn't. Creepy crawlers and stuff wasn't her favorite thing. So
Okay.
we decided.
I don't know if you'll find that in Utah in this time of year, but I don't know. I could be wrong. So maybe, guys, diving in, there's been a recent shift. We've always thought about California is probably, this is solar, this is renewable energy, this is green tech, blah, blah, blah. But recently that trend has changed. So maybe one of you want to talk about this just a little bit.
I can quickly dive in. And it looks like, so there was a report from Canary Media that I was reading where looks like looks like Florida outpaced California and Texas in solar projects in terms of deployments. So the constructions, so I think in terms of key figures, just going back, in terms of total deployment, I looked at a couple of the numbers and it was crazy. Like California so far is still the leader with 41 gigawatts. Texas is at 18.8 and Florida is at 12.6. That just blows my mind in general. Like compared to the other states out there, these guys are just leading like the charts.
Texas is a very favorable state to work in for projects like this. On our side, in the structural side, it's what we call a home rule state, which means ultimately the state itself has an adopted building code, but the states or the counties themselves, the jurisdictions having authority, they ultimately make the decision of what they do or don't do. So they can essentially make the call, like, yeah, if you want to build a solar plant here, like, go ahead. Like, we don't care. Well, maybe they probably care a little bit, but
Yeah.
So I think that one of the other interesting points here is that, like, these Texas and Florida, we think of these states as probably more conservative states. And solar is not the most conservative topic generally. So it's just interesting, I think, from my perspective, this is market forces. Like, this is straight up economics that is driving this shift in capacity installed. And I mean, the numbers speak for themselves, right?
Money talks. And the main thing, I think, with, like you pointed out, Texas, like, they're independent with respect to their grid operation. That's a key thing for them. That's going well. And with Florida, which is leading right now in 2023, at least in terms of deployments made.
Yeah.
They have Florida Power and Light. That's their, I believe, the utility.
Yep.
So they're
and the AHJ.
And the AHJ as well.
Interesting
Helps
situation.
Them. I don't want to say monopoly, but yeah, it is.
We're gonna edit that out. I mean, most of the projects you're working on, they're usually in Texas and Florida, I feel,
Texas,
or at least
Florida,
a strong
California,
percentage.
Those 3 states.
Yeah.
But majority of my projects are in Texas.
Yeah.
And then probably Florida second, and then California third.
Everything is bigger in Texas. I
Yeah.
have to say that.
And,
I'm paid to say that.
My projects in Texas are quite a bit larger than the projects in Florida that I work on.
Yeah.
So typically, projects in Florida work on about 75 megawatt projects. I have projects.
And that's due to, there's some sort of, they're all 74.5 megawatt AC, and there's some, I think, tax incentive that if you go over 75, you don't get it. If you're under, you're good.
Interesting.
So pretty much Texas, all of them are just like...
Yeah, but in Texas, I have a project like 608 megawatt project, which is massive.
Yeah.
It's nuts,
Yeah, that's just phase 1 of that project.
Yeah, I'm sure the listeners know, but I was looking at stats the other day of a typical coal-fired power plant. I mean, those are on the order of 400, 500 megawatts, and we're building utility-scale solar plants that are exceeding that, which is just hard to grasp. It's a lot of land area. They're huge, but that's the power we're doing these days. It's kind of remarkable.
Yeah.
And going back to the site visit, the site was about 5 megawatt, and we spent the entire day like just doing the Golden Row walk and things like.
What is it? Hold on. What is the Golden Row? What is this? It sounds like a casino term or something.
It's the row that's supposed to be golden from the construction point of view, that, hey, this is like the perfect row and everything is good from
So they don't, instead of galvanizing the
engineering.
piles, they do a 14 karat gold
Yeah,
dip.
I wish. No.
Oh.
This is to make sure that like engineering's plans are the construction is done based on the engineering plans, and they're making sure that everything is kosher with respect to what's shown in the plan set. So that's pretty much what the Golden Row is. But yeah, when we walked around, I thought that was like, I felt fatigued after the end of the day, but then I realized a 200 megawatt project, you're going to be on ATVs the entire time. There's no way you're walking from one end to the other. So it's crazy, the scale.
Site visits I've been on that are 200 megawatts and larger. I mean, I've been on a couple, and one had school buses where they would
they do.
Yeah, everybody meets at the central headquarters, and then they have school buses that they deployed to location. And then not everybody, but a lot of people, side by sides and stuff like that to get around. You're not walking from where you park your car. They're just so massive.
Yeah.
We walked the Golden Row in Vegas at RE Plus, right? Remember that? Or maybe you don't remember that.
Which night was that?
I don't know. It was all a blur.
It was all a blur to me as well.
Yeah, I think we went to a conference there, but I don't quite remember.
I'm
not sure.
I want to see videos.
I've got them. I've got videos.
Yeah, bro, we do have some.
Yeah.
We strategically didn't post those.
Yeah. Jordan said they were not. Don't post
This is not Instagram friendly. No, it wasn't that weird. Anyway, recapping. Yeah, it's an interesting shift in the deployment this last year. I don't know what's going to happen in 2024. Any guesses? You want to take a wager? Is this trend going to continue? Florida, Texas? I feel like it is.
I think so.
I think so as well.
Yeah.
I think California, there was this other article which I was reading where they're just trying to put solar everywhere. Like, I think near freeways, like entry and exit routes, where any place where land is just not being utilized, I think they're just trying to make sure they're just trying to deploy as much solar as they can.
Why not? And this might lead us into a different topic, but I was also looking at, we'll get to this, recycling of panels. And part of and recycling is one term, but reusing is another term. And as we repower these solar installations, the utility scale ones, the panels a lot of times can probably just be reused in other capacities.
Sure.
And it's like, just throw it everywhere. Throw it on your roof. Put it on the road or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think moving swiftly on, we've got another topic here. So what do we want to talk about next? It's the energy mix solar's rise. So this is how is our energy capacity changing? I think last year, what was it, 6% now is solar in the... We're going to keep that on.
No, don't do that.
Our listeners can't see it, but Prahalad spilled his tea all over himself. It was a strategic tea spill. But yeah, I don't know. Russ, what do you know about this?
Okay, so yeah, I've got some numbers. So right now for our national grid, it's about 6% of the total energy. One thing I did find that was interesting from Energy News Networks is that the cost of the big pushback for solar was the cost it would require to produce electricity. And coal is so much cheaper. Right? So coal right now costs about $36 to produce 1 megawatt hour of electricity. And according to Energy News Network, solar costs $24 to produce the same amount of energy right now. So solar is becoming less expensive than coal. So that I think is going to be a huge shift as solar continues to be less costly to produce, or you're just going to see more states investing. Yeah,
and there's a couple things here. I mean, we'll probably get to Perovskite in a second, so hold your excitement. I guess the other point I wanted to make is that these are the raw dollar costs right now, and this is also doesn't take into account perhaps a timeline. If you think about a nuclear plant, like how long does it take a nuclear plant to actually get built? My quick Google search said 6 to 8 years. Is it really 6 to 8 years? I feel like it's 8 to 14, realistically. And a solar installation, you've probably worked on a project 2 years ago that started, was under construction, and is now interconnected. Is that?
Yeah,
that's true. Yep. Right. And
the speed of solar, utility scale solar, still blows my mind.
Yeah.
The sheer scale of these projects. I come from a substation background, and the time it takes to design, just to do the design work for like a substation compared to solar, it's very different. We're talking months versus years of design phase, and then construction for like a substation. But for solar, most of the time, the construction's starting before the design's even at IFC.
Yeah.
That's a very real, it's very fast.
Yeah, and part of that makes sense in a way because, our clients are wanting to procure their materials, MV cables, piles, module. I mean, all of this stuff, they're trying to buy all of that so they can start building it when IFCs come out, not buy all the stuff after. Yeah, so it's very common practice, and I think for the most part, we're pretty good about that.
Is that because like substation has to do a lot with interconnect studies? Is that why it takes too long? Or
and I want to clarify, this is not talking about like the collector substations at like a utility scale solar. Those are very, and I hate to use the word cookie cutter, but they are pretty cookie cutter. I'm just sharing my experience with switch yards and substations and where I was cutting my teeth. And I had a project that my entire career, my previous employer, I worked on design for 5 years for the same project. There are multiple phases of that project. Lead times is one of the issues, just like with solar. I guess I'm not 100% sure all the other reasons why, but they definitely did not start construction until IFC.
Interesting.
Which is, I think, very unique with solar, where they do start construction before IFC often.
Yeah, I think that's the majority of the time. At least procurement. I mean, procurement's always done 60, 90%. And then, maybe IFC starts and then or IFC phase comes into play and then they're already driving piles, et cetera.
And for substation procurement would come at IFC.
Yeah,
I've done procurement for substation before, and that's a very lengthy process as well.
So this probably brings us to a related topic, a little bit of chat about Perovskite, because I think it's always in the news. It's just come into the news again recently. There's efficiency breakdown or breakthroughs. There was the traditional style of panel. There was a breakthrough. What was it? Longi produced 33.7% efficiency?
9%.
What was it? 33.9?
Yeah, 9%.
Yeah.
So there's news that I found yesterday. I was just news that came out where I think they're calling it a tandem cell.
Yes, tandem cell. Yep.
Where they're using silicon, the regular silicon, along with a typical solar cell in tandem with perovskite on top. So they're increasing the efficiency. So just a little bit of a breakdown on like the typical efficiencies are around 25% for solar panels.
Explain exactly what you're talking about with efficiency of solar panels.
So solar panels, they don't absorb, so they're relying on the rays of the sun, and then there's a certain frequency that they can absorb. The light has lower frequencies, higher frequencies, and the solar cells typically work on the lower frequency spectrum. So it's not like they're absorbing all of the energy that the sun is providing. So you do have a cap on the efficiency, and in relative terms, it's very efficient.
Yeah.
But in terms of what the sun is providing and what you're absorbing, there's a difference. So
and that frequency is it, if I'm understanding correctly, it's the angle of the ray that's hitting the panel, right?
that it's more to do with, we have ultraviolet, all these different rays. Like it's white light has different spectrums, and certain spectrums get absorbed, certain don't. So the higher frequency spectrums don't get absorbed by solar cells compared to the lower frequency spectrum. So the lower frequency is what it likes, absorbs that pretty well. So that's what causes the efficiency. Yes, there is incident. The angle of it also makes a pretty big difference, because that's how it's going to absorb it. But the main thing is that the frequency, the spectrum, is what it's looking at. But yeah, so with perovskite absorbs high frequency spectrum. So the reason they're doing a tandem cell is they want to cover more of the spectrum. So lower frequency by silicon and higher frequency by perovskite, you get a higher efficiency. That's
What's
sort of
perovskite?
like it's a new.
That's hard. You're gonna have to try to explain it. It's kind of like the holy grail, though, I feel, of solar technology, right? It's once we figure this out and how to keep the degradation in a competing realm with our current technology, the efficiencies are going to like skyrocket, right?
Yeah. So perovskite, I believe I forget, it's readily available in nature, but I forget the exact compound, what it is. But
it's like a different crystal structure.
It's a different
of
crystal
silica.
structure, and but yeah, like it's the problem with perovskite is it's fragile, like Chris was saying. So it's, compared to silicon, it's very difficult to. It's not very easy to work with, and I think that's where they're trying to make strides, trying to make sure that together, so you can have a layer of silicon and then you have a layer of perovskite, and then you can try and gain efficiencies in that process.
Yeah,
so.
And I watched a video recently, so it's very technical citation here. I saw a video on YouTube, just like you're seeing right now. It's one of the concerns was the way that they've been achieving the membrane. Is that right? Am I right
think
here?
so.
The way they've been achieving the membrane over the perovskite material was typically made out of lead. It was like a chemistry-based membrane, and there was recently a breakthrough, I think, of using some sort of metallic, maybe aluminum or something, this membrane. And so it's a much more durable surface, it's high performing, and it reduces the degradation like a lot. So I think that just recently happened. So I guess we'll see hopefully in the future. I think there was a Canadian company too that is actually bringing perovskite to the market. I'd have to check the source on that.
Connecting this to how it impacts us, I think it's going to be more energy dense solar farms now, and then also higher, because it's more efficient now, cable sizing, all these things are going to start changing. So a lot of things that will impact how engineering is done, but especially with making things more energy dense, you're trying to fit more in less. So that's going to be a challenge that when it does come out, it'll be interesting for us as a group to tackle that. So it'll be pretty cool. So.
Yeah, land is definitely important. And input to the whole calculus is, where are we going to put this stuff?
We'll get to that in a future episode, I'm sure.
Can I just because I want to make sure that it's clear that when we're talking about efficiency, that people really understand what you're talking about, because I think just when you're saying 30, would you say 36%?
I think it was 33.9. That's what they achieved.
33.9% efficient. People might hear that and not understand exactly what that means and say that's only 4% efficient compared to what? Let's explain what that efficiency.
Well, what about like the gasoline engine? I think gasoline engine is like.
Yeah, but that's what 20? I'm saying.
I don't know.
Yeah, let's just divulge a little bit of what the significance of 34% efficiency is.
Yeah.
And again, it's a relative. I think it would be nice if they just, the 25% is the 100%. If that
25% is considered 100%.
Considered 100%. So again, it goes back to that same thought process of the sun is able to provide, like, the spectrum of light. There's so much energy available, but so if that energy is considered 100%, what a solar cell can actually absorb is probably 25%.
Gotcha.
So your relative scale is already lower. So you might be thinking from the perspective, oh wow, the sun is so powerful, but you guys are the solar cell.
That's my perspective. That's EVS's new motto, actually. The sun is so powerful.
But the solar cell is not that powerful. So, but it is efficient. Like, it is it's quite efficient because it is focusing on the lower frequency spectrums that
the
that
base
it likes.
frequency.
Yeah, so that's what it absorbs. But yeah. So
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. I just want to make sure it was clear.
Yeah.
Because when we're talking about efficiencies, people might not understand exactly.
I'm glad you guys are explaining because it's still not terribly clear for me, but
Sure.
that's not my job here.
Yeah.
So moving swiftly on, let's talk about one more thing. Let's talk about the role of battery energy storage systems in solar. This is BESS for the uninformed. A lot of projects we work on now at EBS have BESS components. Some do not still. Some are just interconnected into the grid, and that's fine. But a lot of them have BESS. Why? What's the point? I guess it makes sense. The sun doesn't shine at night, but there's a few more reasons probably.
So, there's lots of different reasons why, I guess, but I would say, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe like one of the biggest reasons is because when the sun's out, maybe it's not a high demand for energy. So then where does that energy go? Don't want to waste it.
Yep.
So we store it, and then we can inject it into the grid when it's in demand.
Yep.
And it also allows for sustainability at night.
Yep. Lower demand at night, but there still is
There's still
demand.
Yep.
Yep,
And then
exactly.
just going back a little bit, like we were talking about how solar is coming online. There's so much more solar coming online. At the end of the day, solar is still, it's a reliable source, but it is dependent on nature. Like you can't have sunlight today. It could be cloudy tomorrow. So it's a variable source of energy.
Right.
Same with wind as well. It's again variable. So on the grid, you typically you want firm capacity, which means
that is definitely the buzzword.
Yeah. So firm capacity being that, hey, at any instant of time, I want X amount of power. I want 100 gigawatt of power. I should be able to get that power, right? So with the variabilities offered by solar and wind, sometimes you can't offer, you won't be able to guarantee that. So the way you make solar or renewables firm capacity is by adding BESS, battery energy storage system, or energy storage in general, I should say. But what we are seeing now is co-location of battery energy storage along with PV. And the reason being is now you can consider that entire energy station firm capacity that's providing energy to the grid. So with the help of energy storage, you're able to guarantee that. I think that's the base underlying of why battery energy storage or energy storage is just taking off. So that's something I just wanted to quickly mention on why we're doing that. And then there's different financial incentives for battery energy storage,
right?
Or, again, energy storage in general. I think there's energy arbitrage, frequency response, things that batteries can do well. And there's incentives like arbitrage, you charge when the rates are cheap, and then discharge when it's higher. So all these kind of things are making it financially viable. So yeah, I think again, like solar, like typically I think you start making your money back in about 10 to 12 years and that's where a lot of the developers would do their financial modeling to see how can we recoup our money faster. Yep. That's where energy storage has a role to play, where you're stacking up value. With that, you're able to do energy arbitrage. You're also able to do firm capacity, all these kind of things. So yeah.
There's so many different battery manufacturers out there. There's different chemistries. We don't need to go into those details now, but it's probably a lot to keep track of on the electrical side of things. Things are constantly changing. Nothing's that simple anymore, is it?
No, it's not simple. So one of the things, as you're bringing this up, a lot of basically for solar projects, we anticipate that every project is going to have some sort of storage system, either retrofitted or in the original design, a new design. But one of the things, like you were bringing up offline here, was that a lot of times the batteries aren't even designed yet.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to design an interface that are designed with some things
that's just crazy.
So one of the things I was going to bring up is that, our industry, and we'll touch more on this in a future episode, but our industry is so new. We don't have the workforce out there established, like coal that's 100-year-old, right? Oil and gas. And so we are having to just learn and set the industry standards as we're going. And one of the things that's really unique, I think, about EBS is we do a lot of that. We do set the industry standard on a lot of these things that we're not. I had a project where we're doing a DC coupled BESS, and we've ourselves and the client have had to learn so much about, this entire process, the battery, because it's so new. And we had to figure out, how do you do your studies? How do you do the design? How do you make sure that it's, functioning the way that is supposed to be function. So we're
And the complexity of DC coupling on top of all of that.
Let's dive into the complexity of DC coupling right now.
it is very complex. There's a lot of moving parts to it.
Yeah, you got to couple the DC
To the
best, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
We had an internal call, like I think yesterday, where we were just generally talking about the updates from RE Plus, and I raised a question: is DC coupled dead? And
Wait, what are you talking about?
no, because just to back up, AC coupling is when
Oh, so there's also
AC coupling and DC coupling.
AC coupling's much easier to design.
Now, if you put the two together, do you get a great rock band?
You
from
do.
the 70s and 80s.
Yes.
And then honest plug for all any AC/DC fans out there, whether it's Best or not, the most recent AC/DC records are really good. I'm just going to say from the 2000s are really good. They're actually some of their best. So just a little plug from an AC/DC fan.
In my previous company, we had T-shirts AC/DC because we did DC coupling for that. That was the business that we were in. So it was,
But not AC.
no,
How are these not? What? Okay, whatever.
no, but yeah. So AC coupling is when your battery and your PV have separate interconnects. So they connect to the grid separately versus DC coupling, where you have PV and BESS, because they're both DC sources, tied to the same, they're interconnected to the inverter, and then the inverter ties to the grid. So you have one less conversion process. So the efficiency
right.
is higher when you're thinking DC coupled, but then that comes with challenges and also the use cases, permitting. There's so many things that on a high level view, it looks like, oh yeah, it's more efficient. Why aren't we doing this? But at the same time, like there are things like that we aren't considering. Permitting processes are easier, which is something we were discussing yesterday. So yeah, like I think that's why I raised the question: is DC coupled dead? But DC coupling has its purposes. It's good for microgrid applications where you want to extend the capacity of your solar farm. You can, you typically have a DC-AC ratio where the amount of DC available, typically DC gets clipped if, like when they design a site, if let's say the inverter can accept 100 kilowatt and you're producing 100 kilowatt, you have a DC-AC ratio of 1:1. But what you would do is, to account for losses and things like that, you have a ratio that's higher. So you have excess energy that is available but can't be absorbed. So that's the use case for DC coupling, where you can shed some of that excess into a battery, and then when daylight is not available anymore, you have the battery discharge. Yeah, so that's like the quick.
I understood a bit.
Plus the, just land, right?
Yeah.
If you have AC coupled
That's
BESS, you have to have
another
a separate, it's in a complete separate location. It's in the same general area, but it takes up space. And then for DC coupled, it's in the inverter at the location. So it's definitely.
We work on a lot of BESS projects already. You hinted at it earlier. Pretty much all solar installations are probably going to have a BESS aspect. Any more commentary on that looking forward? I think one news article I saw, I think it was from McKinsey, was we're set to quintuple our BESS capacity by 2030. It supports everything we just said. Like everything is going to have BESS, right?
Everything.
Yeah.
And then the one thing that I wanted to, I know we went on a tangent with DC coupling, but like what I wanted to really talk about was like how containers are getting a lot more energy dense.
Yeah.
So I think there was an article which I was seeing where from between March to September, containers went from like 3.5 megawatt hours to 5 megawatt hours.
And this is just an improvement in the chemistry. Exactly.
So they're always innovating. It's not like they did this over 3 months. Obviously, the release of the product was so they've been doing research and they're trying to make things a lot more energy dense, and you're going to see a lot more capacity being put in one single container. So I think that's going to be interesting as we move forward. So that's something to look out for sure. So
I would just say it's just like any technology, right? Where it's just ever improving, ever getting better. So
we're really riding an exponential wave in renewables and solar specifically. It seems every week there's a news article about a new efficiency breakthrough in modules. Like this recent one, 33.9%, like it was probably 33.8% like a few weeks ago.
Right.
We could have been talking about that, but and we'll revisit this in 4 weeks time, whenever that is, and probably have the same thing. Any other closing remarks on solar today, gentlemen?
No.
You want to talk about AC or DC or MC coupling or FC?
No, I think you asked the question, like sometimes we start to build these stuff before they're actually available. We start to build projects before the equipment is actually like ready to go. And I've seen a little bit of that. Like I was in a product development background, right? So I understand where they're coming from, where typically you have to get your product certified by UL or any other listed like a nationally recognized lab. So that process is about a year. So you don't want to wait till your product is out. So what you would typically do is you would get the process started, and then as you reach a certain stage where you're confident that the product is good, you then go out to the market and then you're like, hey, we have a product that's going to come out. You can design with this. And then that's where developers will be like, oh, wow, you have higher capacity. Now let's just start. And then we come in. And then as we go through 30s, 60s, they're wrapping up their listing process. And so once that's out in the market, hopefully like everything coincides and it just works beautifully. But that's typically the process.
Well, I think that demonstrates for the listeners like the crazy world that it's to be on the consulting engineering side of things. It's just that everything's changing all the time. We're coming up with new solutions. And I think, we're on at EBS, we're kind of writing the book on a lot of this stuff. It's just a wild ride on the solar coaster.
Choo-choo.
Yes, choo-choo. No, that's not our motto. It's not choo. It's oh my God, the power of the sun. Anyway, all right, we'll leave it there, gentlemen. Thanks for joining me today on the Sounds of Solar podcast. You can find us, well, you're already listening on this platform, whatever, you know where we're at. We'll be back with another episode very shortly, and we'll see you all soon. Ciao. Choo-choo.